So good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are on book 3, chapter 2, the law of worshiping or adoration. You studied last week with Elmo the purpose of worship, and then external worship. So why do we pray for? And should we pray, loudly in front of others and in groups and things like that? And now today we're going to first talk about life of contemplation, which is only one question. And then we're going to go deeper into prayer itself, which is always very important and very relevant for us to understand the objective of prayer and how does prayer works, which is a common question, especially for those that are new to Spiritism. Okay, so Paco is going to read for us today. Go ahead, Paco, 657. Oh, you're on mute, Paco, sorry. I muted everyone.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. 657. To those who have devoted themselves to a life of contemplation, doing no evil, and thinking only of God get any special merit? No, because if they do no wrongdoing, they do not do good either. Moreover, not doing good in itself is wrong. God wants us to think of Him, but God does not want us to think only of Himself, since God has given the human being duties to fulfill on earth. Those who spend their entire lives in meditation and contemplation do nothing praiseworthy before God, because such a life is completely private and useless to humankind. God will ask them to account for the good they have failed to do.
Yeah, so first we always like to remind everyone that when we talk about God wants, God does not want, we are talking about the natural laws, and it's not that God has any desires or anything like that. God created the natural laws, and the natural laws create causes and consequences for us. So when the spirits talk about the God doing this and God doing that, we have to think that it is on our evolutionary path, our moral and intellectual evolvement, that will create those consequences, and it's our own conscience following the natural laws of God's law that is going to make us reflect, and the punishment comes from ourselves, not from some external sources, right? But we discussed life of contemplation some weeks ago. The idea here is for those people that remove themselves from society and isolate themselves to live only for prayers and only for, as they say here, contemplation. Again, we are not going to say 100%, because there are some special monks in Tibet that isolate themselves, and because of such elevated level of spirituality they end up benefiting humankind with their prayers and their the energy. But these are the exceptions. The majority of us, if we isolate ourselves, we're not going to do any good, neither for us nor for society. So the idea here is, when you think that Spiritism tells us without charity there is no salvation, how are you going to do charity if you isolate yourself from the world, right? What charity you are doing? You're not learning anything. You're not experiencing the challenges of being connected to society, with the positive and negative things that are important to build our awareness and our learning process, right? Again, in both wings, the moral and intellectual. So by isolating ourselves, we're not doing any evil, but we read this actually a couple of chapters ago. It's not enough not to do evil. We have to do good to the best of our abilities, right? So because otherwise we're not going anywhere. Again, we are always progressing, the laws of progress, and we're going to study the law of progress very, very soon. But you'll be, when we are isolating ourselves, we are really not receiving almost nothing useful, right? And again, we need to understand here the whole concept, right? And the exceptions that are important also. So let's say someone that cannot control oneself with the bad tendencies and decide to isolate him or herself to avoid causing harm to others because they need to isolate themselves from society. Like we put those prisoners in jail because we need to isolate them from society because they cause more harm than good. So if you voluntarily exile from society with the purpose, because you know that you are weak and you cannot resist the temptations of harming others, in the end, it is a benefit. It's not the best, because the best it would be for you to face the challenges, to face in society the challenges and overcome the challenges living in society. But sometimes we can't. So that's why it's important to understand the exceptions that again are exceptions. And it's in general, we study here the general. In general, life of contemplation do us no good. Okay, it doesn't help us at all. Okay.
But I could also understand when you're isolated. People that don't understand believe that. You would have to explain, just like you explained, that isolation is no, they're not going to do anything, they're not doing any good. But then they're going to think because they're not out there, they're not doing any harm. So it's
Soraya was saying that someone that is out there, that when you tell them that by isolating, they will tell you, yes, but because I isolate myself, I'm not doing any harm. But then we go back to that question, right? It's not enough not to do any harm. You have to do good as much as possible, right? So it's, again, we have to be aware of our imperfections and our limitations. Because sometimes we get frustrated with our inability to do more than we would like to be able to do more. But it's a progress that we have to take step by step and understand that the intention, the effort, all it's important, because in the end of our incarnation, we need to end our incarnation better than we started. A little better, very little, a lot better, depends on each one of us, but it has to be better, right? We have to look back, we have to arrive on the other side, and when our conscience looks back to our life, we have to look at the positive side of it and have achieved something, right? And that's why we're here studying, because there's a lot of people that are not interested in that. So they are going to face the challenges. At least we're making the effort. Again, it's the effort starts here and it goes from here, to the heart, right? It's hard. To put it here, it's easier. To bring it down here, it's much harder. But the fact that we are aware that we have to do it, it's already a huge step forward. Yeah. Any questions there?
Mother Teresa, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so Mother Teresa has a beautiful statement. She says, greater value has the hands that work than the lips that pray. I think it's a very important thing for us to keep in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also just to recap what spoke last week regarding all those divine laws. This divine laws is the basis of the gospel across the Spirit is, which all the moral teachings of Christ. So it's always good to refer to the teachings of Christ when I'm thinking about those laws, right? So to begin with, he says that all the laws and the prophets are summarized in one thing, right? Do to others what you'd like us to do to you in the same situation. So proactive, do it. So keep in motion, doing something, right? And another thing to consider is when asked what is the most important of the laws, and the Pharisee asked Jesus, his answer was, love God your Father with all your heart, with all your everything. And the second that is equally important, love your neighbors as you love yourself. So there's three things here, right? Love God, the adoration that we have here, right? On the laws. The second, labor, also is an adoration to God. You're going to see that later when we get there. And all the other ones can be divided in the love of yourself and loving others. But here we see the law of adoration to worship God teaches us to give value to things. If you don't give value to God, if you don't recognize the splendor, the perfection of God, how would you value, let's say, your teacher? How would you value the co-worker you want? So it starts with God as the just beginning of everything. And then there's a law of labor. So if the labor is a law, inactivity is against that law. So a life of contemplation would be against that law. Now, we can redefine labor. We're going to get there when we get there, that very few of us is able to work in solitude. But that's a very small exception over the exception.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to discuss prayer. We're going to spend some time in prayer, which is very important, right? 6:58, Paco, please.
Yeah. Is prayer pleasing to God? Prayer is always pleasing to God when it comes from the heart. Intention is everything before God, and a prayer from the heart is preferable to one read from the book. No matter how beautiful it may be, if you read more with the lips than with the thought. Prayer is pleasing to God when it is offered with faith, passion, and sincerity. God will ignore the prayer of a vain, proud, or selfish person unless it is offered as an act of sincere repentance and humility.
Okay, so the first thing that is important here is the definition of prayer. What is really the prayer? And the Spirit says here, intention is everything. If the prayer comes from the heart. When you are praying, you are elevating your vibrational level, right? And by elevating your vibrations, you're connecting to elevated spirits, more elevated spirits. And through this connection, vibrating positive, you avoid negative thoughts, negative influences, and you attract the more evolved spirits that are going to synchronize with your thoughts. So that's the definition of prayer in the sense of how it works. When the Spirit talks about God here, it's really the vibration that you put behind the sentiment, right? Again, going to Mother Teresa, right? One of the most beautiful things that she said when they asked her, when you talk to God, what do you say? And she answered, I don't say anything, I just listen. And then, what does God say to you? And she said, God doesn't say anything, God just listens. So it's really from heart to heart, right? No words needed, right? So that's the purest definition of prayer that I heard. Because we are, again, we come from thousands and thousands of years of praying, reading books and reading or memorized things that we say. Again, if you don't know what to say and you get stuck with a prayer, if you read something, if you use the reading as an inspiration, but you are really with it coming from your heart, it's as effective. It doesn't matter. You don't really need not to, to talk from your heart and create words that are not in you. So if you need the help from something that you read, but again, the intention, right? When you think about the rosary, right? Can you imagine that the majority of people that do the rosary, probably 70, 80, or 90% of the time, they're not paying attention on what they're saying, right? It's impossible. It's, we are going to pray for 1 hour. We can't pray for 1 hour. Some people can, some people, again, we go to the monks there, the exception, but we mere mortals, we need to do a concise prayer according to our level of ability to keep our thoughts elevated. It's like for those that do meditation, I don't. They say you start meditation with 1 minute, with 2 minutes, because that's all you can do in the beginning. And then you start increasing the time as you get more used to it. Because they say if you start trying to meditate for 15 minutes the first time, after 2 minutes, you are bored, lost, thinking about anything else besides the meditation, right? Or you're going to sleep. Or you're going to sleep, yes. So it's the idea with prayer is the same, right? It's important for us to be feeling it. So if we cannot focus more than 5 minutes doing our prayers, we do 5 minutes, 2 minutes. It doesn't matter. What matters is what comes from our heart, the sincerity and the intention. And we are going to divide the prayers in the different types of prayers that we do right later. But the important thing here to understand is what comes from our heart. That's where it has to come from, right? Not from our minds. In Portuguese, you have 2 words, and we use 1 word, and we use orar as the more deep prayer. And rezar, it's when you are doing the rosary and things like that. We separate, but we have 2 words in Portuguese that we in Spiritism we separate, but others don't. You go to the Catholics, they say only 1 word. They actually have the 2 words, but we try to separate. But in English, you have only prayer, so I don't think you have another word for prayer, that as far as I know. But the idea here is when the Spirit says God will ignore the prayer of a vain, proud, selfish person. It's not that God will ignore. Again, we have to interpret the words, right? If you are praying, but you're really thinking about the dinner you're going to have, if you're not thinking worse things, the vibrations, they are low. So they're not going to reach the spirits. The spirits, they are going to connect to us. They know. It's not that they don't want to connect to us, but they need to connect to us when we are vibrating at the same level. At least we have to elevate ourselves so they can lower themselves and connect to us. If we are vibrating very low, again, remember André Luiz, right? 8 years in the lower zones in Nosso Lar, right? And he asks his mother, when he finally meets her later in the book, where were you all these years that I was there struggling? And she says, I was always there. You didn't open yourself to me, in the sense. That's not what she said, right? But that's exactly what she meant, right? You are, and we we talk a lot about this when you talk about spirits in the spiritual world struggling to receive assistance. Where is the help? The help is always there, but you need to sincerely want to receive the help. And most of us, we want the help just externally. We don't really deep want. We want just the quick solution to our problem so we can go back to our bad habits, right? And that's, the spirits are not going to help us with that.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Pop.
Okay, according to what I'm just reading, then I can say that when I do, Our Father who art in heaven, or when I do the rosary, then from the spiritist perspective, that's not a prayer.
Depending on your intention, it can be.
Because that's lip service. That's
if you're doing lip service, it's not a prayer. Yes, you're right.
And then when you do the rosary, like well, I never learned the rosary anyway, but that's not our prayers. That's according to us, also, for the person. That's not a prayer. That's just lip service.
Yeah.
Does it now? My question, second question: does it serve a purpose spiritually?
Well, again, if it is moving you, taking you away from something worse that you could have been doing, right? So let's be very simple. You are there praying, as you say, just repeating words. But the alternative will be for you to be gossiping with your neighbor on, then it's better than that, right? It's always relative, right? But it is not.
It's not prayer.
Yeah, it's not a prayer in the sense that is going to be effective and positive for you, but it can be a way of preventing you from doing something worse, right? So,
But it is interesting because you quoted Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
And you said about the thought, listening, and then here it places emphasis on the thought too.
Yes.
Communication of thought.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and again, the thought can be expressed in words or not, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's
so. I believe that at our level, we are still more comfortable saying words, right? We are not yet ready to communicate through thought. We're far from Mother Teresa. We can use as a guideline for where we want to get one day, but I cannot think and connect with God through thought yet. So we need words, and we need these sometimes memorized words, because that's what at our level, that's what we can do. But it's, again, if it coming from the heart, with the good intentions, with the desire to connect with the superior spirits, with God, then that's really the objective.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, Laura, you raised your hand, and then I answered. We answered before. That's it.
No, I was just going to add that the prayers in the back of the gospel.
Oh.
They are there for use and for assistance, and you have to read them, but they do work. And then if you read them enough, you can remember them and then formulate them on your own. But as you said, it has to do with your intent.
Yes,
I believe.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. The prayers are there as a guidance for us to learn how to pray, what to say, and different situations, right? But again, if you are just reading them and thinking about dinner, it's not going to help, right? So yeah, you are right, Laura. It was good point that we have all the prayers in the back of the gospel that are very important. And actually, the United States Spiritist Federation published a small book just with those prayers, right? It's called Spiritist Prayers. It's a very which is a book that you can carry with you and use it when you are in need of a prayer. Okay. Yes.
I can add something to the other day I was thinking as well, because when it comes to repeating prayers, there are a lot of things that it depends on the intention, right? So let's say there's a beautiful prayer from St. Francis which I connect a lot, but it says, wherever there is hatred, may I bring love. Wherever there is suffering, may I bring attendance, comfort. And then I always think about as well, if you're ready to do that as well, because just mimicking it, but even if you put the intention, you might attract that to yourself. So are you at that level to also go to that places and serve, and are you ready to do the work itself? So it's always a bit on evaluating it. What are you trying? Are you trying to be Jesus, or are you really at your level and praying on your own way, but connecting to God and the divine? It's always tricky to memorize prayers. I find sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's important to be aware again of our limitations, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we talk about Mother Teresa, but we talk about this beautiful prayer that of St. Francis of Assisi, that I think it's one of the most beautiful prayers that we have. But again, it's a guideline, the prayer. If you are doing it with your heart, even if you cannot do all the steps because we're not there, but if you can do one or two steps, right, you can finish this life achieving one or two of the phrases of the prayer, you already did something, right? So it's progress. So that's that's important for us to it's important for us to understand the concept of prayer. But then the second step is how to use it to our benefit. What's the best way for us? And again, it's individual. Each one has to find their own path with prayer, because some people feel comfortable, picking up the prayer from St. Francis of Assisi, but really focusing and putting the heart in interpreting it and using and living it. That's more than enough, right? Some people don't prefer to create words of their own, right? And some people are very good at that with those prayers. Again, it depends on each one of us. Okay.
Yeah, there's no reason for us to think that a memorized prayer cannot be from the heart, cannot be an expression of a true real sentiment coming from the heart that generates thoughts. It's a tool. It's something that you can use, and some people need to use that tool to being able to have that connection with the divinity, whatever it may be. Someone who needs to knee facing east or west and do the thing, it may be just a ritual, but it may be a true exercise of worship. And only that person really knows, only that relationship, that synchrony of that individual, that divinity at that moment knows what it is. So the chapter of the Gospel according to Spiritism that deals with prayer, at the very beginning of the chapter, Kardec leaves clear that this is just guidelines, it's just suggestions. They work. Of course they work, it comes from their heart, but you don't need them. But most of us needs a guide, need something to lead us on how to exercise our worship to the best of our abilities. But no one needs to have that book. No one needs none of that prayers at all. But most of us need that guideline, and it's there to be used. It's a wonderful tool to be used.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And that says right there, it's preferable the prayers that comes straight from the heart.
Offered with faith, passion, and sincerity. Right?
Yeah.
That's what it needs to be. And it's an exercise again, like meditation, you need to exercise until you learn. Prayer also, it's an exercise. We need to get used to it. And for some it's easier, for some it's more difficult, like everything else in life. We have more abilities to do some things than others. So we just have to understand the concept and apply it as best as we can, each one. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Renato.
For you and Elmo, since you guys been, doing, prayer, not only the regular prayer, but also, prayer before passes and prayer for general passes, those prayers. And since, human nature, there's a tendency of, after you're doing things for a long time, it becomes more of a second nature. Like, for example, if you go on a ER and bring some kid, dying, the doctors know they're not gonna feel like, desperate or whatever, because they've been seeing that it's seen like for forever. So for them it's normal. So the question would be for both you guys, when you are praying, when you are doing that, are you still able to do that from the heart, or is more of a thing that you do naturally without thinking?
That's a good question, Renato. Let me reflect. I think that in my case, sometimes it's kind of an automatic, which is, I wouldn't say that every time comes from the heart. I recognize that sometimes it's just something that I do automatically, and I feel it every time I don't feel well after a pray. I say I was not focusing enough. So I think it's something that we need to work all the time, and I on my side, I lack sometimes the work.
I agree. There are times that it flows naturally, that is almost bypassing thoughts, and there are times that I really have to think word by word. So I agree with Ron. Sometimes it just flows naturally. Sometimes it requires a thought process that breaks down that pure sentiment, I think. But I always try to follow the model left by Jesus, with the Our Father's prayer that we're going to see here now. So together.
But I do have a question. I guess it's a follow-up of what Renato is saying. But what I do not understand is how is that relevant to me? Whether you do it with what you said, faith, passion, and sincerity, that's your problem, not mine.
You're right.
You understand what? That's not relevant to me. I mean, if you do it, I'm doing the same prayer with faith, passion, and sincerity. Okay, that's all that matters. I don't care. I don't really care whether you do it with passion or not. That's not relevant. Am I making sense?
Yes, I agree with you, but not completely, Paco, because if a person that is praying moves you, you get carried away with their prayer, and you are able to elevate your thoughts in a more natural way, right? You hear a prayer of Divaldo, for instance, and you engage with the prayer, and you are taken with the prayer to higher levels of vibration. And but yes, the prayer that we normally do at the beginning and the end of the meetings, in the beginning of the meetings, is to bring everyone's attention, to focus everyone, to harmonize the ambient, to put everyone together. So yes, if it doesn't come from my heart, but it helps all of you to focus the attention on the study.
And I'm going to get the energy of the other participants.
Yeah.
So it's a synergistic kind of phenomenon. Am I making like I don't have to when I go to church and I'm going to listen to a mass, I don't have to depend exclusively on the well, the Baptist would be something else because it's it's a higher well, I guess it's New York mentality that, you understand what I'm saying, right? Like it's synergistic, I guess, what you're saying, but it's really up to me.
Yeah. Yes. Again, it's more on you than on someone who's praying, but prayer can make a difference for those around. Can cause the energy level or the vibrational level of the place to go higher, because it's touching people, more people, right? A prayer that doesn't, it's not really coming from the heart, it's more difficult for people to connect and elevate their thoughts. So I think it's both ways, Paco, a little bit.
Yeah, when you do it kind of like, well, what is perfunctory? Perfunctory is when you do things because you have to do things. That's perfunctory performance. You know, like he answered the question kind of perfunctorily, like,
Okay.
because they ask, you answer. Okay, that would be it. But
Yeah.
now I understand.
Well, you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, when Jesus said, when you pray, don't do like the Pharisees. When you pray, lock yourself inside your room,
I like that.
in silence with God, and God, you will answer you in silence.
I like that. I like that.
But when I pray out loud here, it can't be in silence, right? I have to generate sentiments that will generate thoughts, and I have to verbalize those thoughts. So the sincere prayer, when it happens, not always, is an expression of my sentiments. And it has to have a common denominator. It has to be good for everyone. It's not my prayer, it's our prayer.
Yes, I like
Right?
that.
Now, each one will take it in accordance to their level at that day, how they are feeling,
Beautiful.
how they are able to connect. Now, see, my work is to generate the sentiments that generates the thoughts, then I verbalize the thoughts. And as a receiver, you do pretty much the other way around. You receive to the intellect, and then you have to internalize into the intelligence of the heart. You become a part of your sentiments.
Exactly. I like that.
So I believe that the personal prayer that you do, should have the same qualities, no, but it's me and God only, that's it. The one that I say out loud, he has to have that common denominator that has the same value for everyone in that room, in that space.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Karen.
Well, if you're not in a public space, but you're in your own home, is there a qualitative difference between doing a prayer silently versus a prayer you speak out loud?
That's another very good question. If you all heard Carol's question, if there is a difference when you are by yourself in your own home, if you do a prayer out loud or if you do a prayer silently. Normally, we tell people to do the gospel at home, the once a week gospel at home, loud, even if you are by yourself, because then you attract spirits in need that are around you that cannot read your thoughts. Spirits in need, less evolved spirits, they don't have the ability to read your thoughts. More elevated spirits do have the ability, but more elevated spirits don't need your prayers. They're there to help you, not the other way around. But you can use your prayers to help those. Let's say you are praying for those that lost their lives in the hurricane in Florida, right? It's too recent, but let's think of something that happened some time ago. These spirits that are struggling, they can be attracted by your prayers and can come and be assisted by your prayers. They're not going to stay there at your home. It's not something like that. They will be brought there by spirits that are taking care of them. They can benefit from the prayers because they are still too attached to the material world. So receiving a prayer for someone incarnated makes more effect on them than receiving a prayer from another spirit in the spiritual world. So that's the reason you would do the prayer out loud. Again, depends on what's the intention behind the prayer, right? If you are praying to God because you need help, you are sick, you are struggling, so you are asking for help for yourself, you can do in silence because you are asking for yourself. You don't need any other spirits listening to it. But if you are doing a prayer that we should do, asking for the assistance for the spiritual world, or asking for the spirits that are struggling in different, like we say here, in the wars, in the pandemic, to be helped, you should do it out loud, because then you may have spirits that are brought to your place, and that can be assisted through your prayers. Okay?
Yeah, so when you do the gospel at home, you are transforming your home in a temple, in a spiritual center. So your prayer has the same collective value that the common denominator for all these kind of spirits are there for that as well. But normal prayers that you do before you go to sleep or when you wake up, then it's the way you like to do it. The verbalization, the formation of your thoughts is completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
But if it helps you, there is no prohibition for you to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important also, right? When we talk about the accessories to a prayer, right? We need to light a candle to pray. There are some people that need to light a candle to pray. It does not make a difference unless it makes a difference for you. You look at the candle and your vibration elevates because it inspires you. Then fine, light a candle. Until you overcome this necessity of having something material, you can use it, right? I recently learned that the Jewish, they pray moving their heads like this, right? It's because when they are praying, they are an intermediary between God and humankind. They are bringing the light from God, and the light in ancient times was a candle. And the candle flicks like this. So they pray to imitate the candle. That's
Wow.
right. Very interesting, right?
Yes.
But John, you probably visited the Western Wall and you may have felt that vibration. I'm sure it is, I know it's.
Yeah, it's
the prayers of many centuries are in there. You can't help but feel it.
It's an interesting the Western Wall and the old Jerusalem. It's an interesting feeling because it's tense at the same time, because the conflicts are there all the time, right? But everyone that is there is for a spiritual purpose, even if it's some not so clear what the spiritual purpose is, but they have a spiritual purpose. So it's this conflict of energy that it's very interesting. You feel both ways, and if someone that is more sensitive than I am would feel more, like Jusara felt much more than I did, right? But you can feel the different energies, according to where you are there, right? When you go to the Muslim, the temple is it's dominated by Jordan, right? So it's Muslim, and you feel that that energy is different from the Wailing Wall, for instance, that the Jews are putting praying and putting their names there. You feel the different energies there. It's interesting. But again, it's a place of prayer, right? We're talking about prayer. Jerusalem comes to mind, right? And most people are there praying or being tourists, or trying to sell things to the tourists. That's a lot. There's a lot of that there. Okay, 6:59, Paco, please.
Okay. What is the general nature of prayer? Prayer is an act of worship. Praying to God is a means to think, get closer, and communicate with God. A person who prays may do three things: praise, ask, and offer thanks.
Okay, so here are the three three reasons why most people pray, right? And again, one of them, I would say 90% of people pray to ask, right? But you should pray to praise, to ask, and to offer thanks. So you ask for something, we pray and ask for something, and then we receive something, we forget to pray to thank, right? Praising is the worship in it.
What's praise? Yes.
Yeah, you are worshiping God, right? That's the praise. God and the superior spirits. You are not asking or thanking. You are praising, right? You are. Help me here, Elmo. What's
That's
good
a key.
definition of
That-
praise?
Yes.
You are given the proper recognition of the value of that divinity.
Yes.
Say that again. Say that again. There's a recognition of.
Of the value, of the splendor, of the perfection of that divinity that
Oh,
you worship
okay.
for.
A recognition. Praise is
Proper
like-
recognition. Yes.
Would you be connecting yourself at a deeper level?
Yeah, interesting. Very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Yes.
whole prayer is the connection.
Yeah.
The whole three phases of the prayer. The one that Jesus taught us when Peter asked him and he gave our fathers has those three things, right?
Yes. If you look at our,
And they can
you
use
know,
that as a model.
yeah, you look at the prayer of our Father, which are in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I don't, you know, you start praising, and then you ask, and then you thank. Right? That's the prayer. If you pay attention, you divide in three parts, right? So that's what we should be doing with our prayers, because we are always in need of something, right? But we are always receiving something. Every day is a blessing, right? That we live here with all the struggles. So can we offer thanks for having lived another day and learning? That's the thanks. Asking for what we are struggling and what we need help with, right? But we start by asking, praising God as the or the superior spirits, or you know, whatever you are praying to, right? We are going to discuss later to whom you should pray, right? But you know, if you don't know exactly to whom to pray, pray to God, because go directly to the boss, right? And then God will reach, the prayer will reach those that are in need, right? That are going to receive.
Yeah, I do. May I just make a comment? I do like Elmo's definition of praise in terms of recognition of those forces that are kind of higher than ourselves. Yes, I kind of.
Yeah.
Just a comment that I find interesting, the feeling that I have when I'm asking something during prayer, or when I'm thinking. It's so, for me, it's so much stronger when I'm thinking to something, the feeling of gratitude, or when I remember everything in my life that I think that I am grateful for it. I just think it's funny how different. I don't know if there's any difference in vibration, but I just can clearly define the feeling that I have when I'm asking for something, or when I'm saying thank you and just grateful for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, yeah, it's as she was talking about different feelings when you are asking, when you are thanking, when you are praising, right? You should have different feelings, right? Because these are different emotions. There are different emotions. So if you notice them, I think it's good. It's nice that you can differentiate, because I don't think many people will feel different in the three parts of it.
I'd like to well, this is a comment. I like to share that in self-help programs, it is suggested that we write a gratitude list. And what I do specifically is that on my birthday, I update my gratitude list every year.
Oh,
So I thought, yes, I am grateful. I'm very grateful because, and then I start listing all the things that I'm grateful for. I usually have like 34 or 35 things.
wow.
It's a great tool. I have to share with you. It's a great tool, especially in winter months when you get the blues because of the sun or whatever. You just grab that list next to my recliner and then you start reading things and it centers you. So I update it. It's what we call it a gratitude list.
Okay.
And I update it every year. So it's just here, like I said, prayer to offer thanks.
Yeah, these are all tools that, again, we need, each one of us need to define what are the best tools for ourselves. How do we better, what is more effective for each one of us, right?
Exactly. It's a suggestion. It's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a good one. All right, let's do one more.
660. Okay.
Yeah.
Does prayer make humankind better? Yes. Those who enthusiastically and confidently prayed have more strength to withstand the temptations of evil and to get help from the good spirits sent by God to assist them in so doing. Such help is never refused when honestly asked for. How is it that same individuals who pray for long periods of time are sometimes repulsive, jealous, envious, and harsh, lacking in compassion and mercy, and even extremely cruel? What matters is how you pray and not how much you pray. These individuals presume that all the virtue of prayer lies in its length and duration, and turn a blind eye to their own flaws. For them, prayer is an occupation, a means of passing their time, but not a true study of themselves. In these instances, it is not the remedy that is ineffective, but the manner in which it is employed.
Yeah, that's a couple of very interesting points here, right? Prayer makes humanity better. Of course it does, because by praying we elevate the vibrations, and we know that the vibrations of this world are very, because it's a world of trials and expiations, the vibrations are kind of dark, and André Luiz describes the atmosphere of the earth when he approaches Earth in one of the books, I believe it's The Messengers, when they're getting close to Earth, that he sees everything very dark, very gray. I think gray is the best word for it. And when I talked in the beginning of the discussion of these monks that pray, that help humanity, with their prayers, they kind of dissolve this gray matter that surrounds Earth, which is the thoughts of almost 8 billion people, most of us thinking not very good thoughts throughout, during our days. So more people are sincerely praying. Again, sincere is the key word here. The better for humankind, the more humankind will benefit from it. And they make a note here, the spirits, that help is never refused when honestly asked for. That's something we keep repeating here, right? When you get back to the spiritual world and you are in the desperate mode there, and you sincerely ask for help, help will be there. But if you're not asking sincerely, then help may not be there. Maybe if you merit it, but maybe not. So it's important. Never refused when honestly asked for. So if you sincerely pray, you are going to be helped 100% of the time. And we normally don't like to say always or never, but in this case, it's always. If you sincerely praying, asking for help, you always will receive help.
Sometimes the help you receive is not what you ask for, but you receive it, right?
Yes, that's a different story. It's not what you want, it's what you need, but you always receive. Yes. And then the second part, you can think of many different religions without criticizing any of them. But there are some religions that you pray a lot. And again, as we discussed here before, right? Depends individually, how long can you pray, right? We just, yesterday was Yom Kippur in the Jewish religion, right? They spend the whole day in the synagogue praying. I have a problem believing that you can pray for the whole day. Yes, you don't eat, you don't do anything else.
Shower.
You cannot do anything. You can only go to the synagogue walking and pray. Again, it's their tradition. We have to respect, we have to understand. They've been doing this for more than 4,000 years. But for me, I find it hard to believe that you can stay 12 hours in a place praying.
With children.
With children, whatever, separate, well, depending on the synagogue, together or separated men and women, depending on the how much Orthodox you are. But then also, the Muslims, they pray 5 times a day, right?
Oh, that's true.
We'll turn to Mecca. Can they pray sincerely 5 times a day? Yes, they can. Do they? I have my doubts. You're right, because it ends up becoming something that you are forced to do. Catholics that they go to church every Sunday, it's very different because it's only a 40-minute mass. But even there, I'm sure there's a lot of them that go there and don't pay attention to it for more than 5 minutes, right? It goes everywhere. Again, we are all imperfect human beings, right? And we can come to the spiritist centers, and you do this vibration that Elmo does beautifully on Monday. And I'm guilty. Sometimes I get lost, and I'm start thinking of something else. Well, we're struggling to get into the sense of everything, right?
And that 30 seconds out of 1 minute prayer that you were able to elevate yourself, that's good enough. That's strong. And that's what I think most prayers should be short, because we don't have that attention span for long prayer. We just don't.
Yeah. Okay, 8 p.m. We'll continue with prayer next week. It's a very interesting subject. We're going to probably have a couple more weeks more studying prayer. There are some other aspects to discuss. That to pray for others, if we should ask for forgiveness for our mistakes, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of interesting things to discuss here. Okay. Any final questions? Anyone? Okay, so Carol, can you do a final prayer?